Hi everyone. In this how-to video presentation, I'll be demonstrating on how to create a plugin that checks for multiple connections on an input port of an object. So in any design, we have constraints on the number of inputs that can be associated with a port or a pin. So for the correctness of the design, we must ensure that the connections don't exceed the required values. That gives us a little background on why the plugin is important. So to get started, we'll be creating a project directory for our plugin. Let's name it as video ppt5. So the directory is created. We'll go inside video ppt5 and we'll start the webgme server. This should take a while to start. Since the server is listening, we'll do localhost 88. So we'll create a new project video 55 and import an existing design, logic gates. I'll be sharing the logic gates along with the code in the Piazza post. So create, okay, that's good. If we look into the meta model, this is actually similar to one of the homework assignments that we had earlier. So in here I have circuit diagram that consists of all the other classes. Input reg and output reg are the registers that store the input and the output values. I've included only 3 gates for simplicity of this video presentation. If we go into the language composition, we see that there are ports to the gates and the registers. So each gate has 2 input pins and 1 output pin. Input register has only 1 output pin and output register has only 1 input pin. There are 2 circuits that are predefined in this project. Nothing of significance, but we'll be iterating over these connections to see how our plugin works finally. Coming back to the terminal, we'll kill the server and we'll create create a new plugin known as multiple input check plugin. So this should create a .js file in this folder. Okay. So we have this multiple check plugin. There will be a default code that would be generated after we run this command. For the purpose of this video presentation, I'll be copying a previously generated code with the same name. So I'll select copy and I'll replace the entire code with the code that I just copied. modifying the indentations. Okay, so there is one basic change that has to be done in the code definition. Since we are using plugin result to store the error messages and to store the error messages for viewing it in the console after we run the plugin. So one of the basic requirements for using plugin result is to have a plugin message class that is defined, that should be defined. So that is defined over here in the define and in the function. Similarly, we have a plugin message array that stores all the error messages which are displayed in the window. Coming to the main code, we have load node map function that traverses all the nodes, and we have this check input connection. So check input connection basically traverses the given design and then we create a node array. We create an array which consists of the net name, the destination port name, and the destination gate. So what this function will do is it will traverse the entire design, check for the connections, this connection, and then store the name of the net, the unique path of this input pin, and the gate to which it is associated with. So firstly, so this net array consists of these three things. Using these three things, what we intend to do is, if we have multiple connections on the same input pin, though the net names will be different, but the path of this pin will be an unique ID. So comparing these two nets, comparing the values of the input pins, we'll be able to know how many connections are there that are associated with the same pin. Yeah, so we have this net array. We traverse through this net array to get number of input connections. Now this number of input connections is not exactly the number that we want. This will give you n into n minus 1, where n is the number of connections to the port or pin in this case. So as we can see, if there are 3 connections, that means 3 into 2, so 6 will be the value that number of input connections will have. So in order to get this n from this number of input connections, I have written a function get number of inputs. So total inputs will have n value, that is the number of connections to a unique pin. If this total inputs exceeds the total number of input count, we set the error flag as true. Valid input connection count is set in the function over here. So we have the flexibility to choose how many valid connections a design can have. So this number can be varied to check for or it can be used for various designs with different input count conditions. After setting the error flag, we just have to populate the error message that has to be displayed. So in my case, I'll be populating the error message with the set of wires that have the same input pin connection name. So that's about it. We'll save this and we'll do webgme start again to start the web server. Server is listening. We'll refresh it, and in the language tab, circuit diagram, in the meta tab we'll be including our plugin. So here it is, multiple input connection plugin has been added. So this, in our first test case, we will be using number of input connections as 1. So each port should have only one input connections to it. So if we run this multiple plugin, we should not have any error that should be seen. As we can see, there are no errors. Let's introduce some errors. So let us say we connect B1 to the input pin of an AND gate which already has connections from the A1 register. So let's name this as B1 duplicate. So we see that this connection should error out in our plugin now. Show results. It shows that error in connection of pins. Check message for details. Check message. Here we can see that circuit 1 wires B1 duplicate and A1 net are connected to the same port of AND. So it clearly gives us which two nets are violating and on which gate these pins on which input gate pins these nets are there. So this message should be easy to, we'll be able to debug the results more efficiently by checking these results. Also, since we have one more circuit too, this plugin will also check on all the designs that are generated by the user. So if we do A2 duplicate, so here also we see that there is a violation on this input pin, since there are two net connections from A2 and B2. Running multiple check plugin again, so we should see two errors, one in circuit 1 and one in circuit 2. So details, as I said, we see one error in circuit 1, another one in circuit 2 which has B2 net and A2 duplicate are connected to the same OR gate. To have another test case will be to check if it runs for multiple input connections or not. So instead of 1, if we give 2 as a valid number of input counts, now both of these circuits are not violating the plugin now, since we are considering 2 or less than 2 input connections as valid connections. So running this, we should not see any error. Oops. Oh, clear. I didn't refresh it after changing it. Let's refresh it. Okay, now run the plugin, save and run. Should not see any error. Yep, as expected. Clear results, close. Now just to verify if it is working, we'll introduce one more connection to the same input pin. Now there are 3 input connections to the same input pin of the AND gate. C2 duplicate. Sorry, C2 duplicate. Now only circuit 1 should fail when we run this plugin. Save and run. Show results. Failing. Yeah, the circuit 1. So B1 duplicate, A1 net are connected to the same AND pin. So it will show pairwise values of the nets which are connected to the violating port. Clear results, close. So this plugin can be run for multiple values of valid connection count. Changing this according to your preferences, you can validate any design for multiple connections for your input ports. That's about it. Thank you guys. Have a nice day.